Good evening. The board now reconvenes this meeting of the Plano ISD Board of Trustees. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? In open session at 6:02 p.m. on January 16, 2018 at the Plano ISD Administration Building. I am Missy Bender, President of the Plano ISD Board of Trustees. On the board's behalf, I wish to extend a warm welcome to all who are present and to our web and video viewers. We will conduct our meeting focusing on the district's two major goals: ensure the continued improvement in student learning and ensure the efficient use of resources. Let me introduce my fellow trustees and staff. Seated to my left are Sarah Bonzer, Interim Superintendent, Nancy Humphrey, Board Secretary, and Trustee Tammy Richards. Seated to my right are Board Vice President David Stolley, Trustee Yoram Solomon, Trustee Angela Powell, and Executive Assistant to the Superintendent and Board of Trustees Denise Gillespie. Trustee Tammy Richards will now offer an inspirational message.
Thank you, President Bender. Those of us who serve on local school boards believe that public education is America's most vital institution. It is a civil right necessary to the dignity and freedom of the American people, and all children deserve equal access to an education that allows them to reach their full potential. As we celebrate this week the life of an exceptional person and civil rights leader, Dr. Martin Luther King, I'd like to share a brief yet impactful quote from Dr. King. "I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear." As the leadership of this district, may we lead with love, integrity, and passion to serve the 54,000 children of Plano ISD. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. The board welcomes our student greeters, and they will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. This evening, we have students from the Culinary Arts program at Plano East. Students, please come to the front of the room, and will everyone please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the students that we have joining us this evening from the Culinary Arts program at Plano East. This team has recently won the Healthy Kids Choice Menu Challenge. They created a kids menu for Topgolf and won first place. Beginning this month, their meal will be included on every menu at every Topgolf in North America. Students, we want to thank you for attending tonight and congratulate you on this honor. Would you take a moment and introduce yourselves to us and tell us how long you've been in the Culinary Arts program?
Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm a senior, and I've been in this program for 2 years.
I'm Zach. I'm also a senior, and I've been in the program for 2 years.
My name's Helena, and I've been in the program for 2 years as well.
All right, thank you. Is Lois Conwell here tonight? Lois, why don't you come on up here too? So Lois is the teacher who leads the Culinary Arts program at Plano East, and we want you to know how proud we are of your student accomplishments. And let me ask if all of us could please applaud the accomplishments of these students. Before we take a picture together, board members, are there any comments that you'd like to share with Ms. Conwell or the students?
Certainly over the years, we have so much enjoyed going to the Plano East Bistro. So thank you all for your dedication, and I look forward to eating at your restaurants when you establish them in Plano.
So if I go to Topgolf, can I order a kids menu? Congratulations, that's an awesome award.
Yes. So, Debbie, would you like for them to kind of join the board up here? And board members, if you would sort of come together so that we can have a joint photo.
Thank
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here this evening, and you're free to continue your evening. We'll now move on to the recognition part of our agenda. And the first part related to students, I will turn over to Ms. Oliver, our Assistant Superintendent for Government, Community, and Planning Initiatives. It's because she is made aware of student guests prior to the meeting. Ms. Oliver? Do we have any student guests this evening?
No, ma'am, we do not this evening.
Okay.
But may I say something before our students leave? Some of them, I believe, have family members here this evening, and so before they get away, I wanted to ask if the family would stand who may be here with your student from the Culinary Arts Program. Can we applaud them as well? That's a big commitment for our families. Thank you for being here tonight with your children.
And thank you for supporting them as they explore their passion and their interests.
Thank you, President Bender.
Thank you. In addition to the culinary arts students who were here tonight, we have more student achievements to celebrate, as you can see in the PowerPoint. The board is proud to recognize 2 Plano West students who have won the 3rd District 2017 Congressional App Challenge, a computer coding challenge. Let's give them a little round of applause. And 2 more students from Plano West have been named in the top 300 scholars in the Regeneron Science Talent Search. The top 300 scholars were selected from more than 1,800 entrants from 555 high schools in 45 states plus Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and 6 American and international high schools overseas. So let's congratulate them as well. We also have some special staff recognitions in our Human Resources Department. I invite these employees, who I think are seated at the front over here, to come to the front of the room. These staff members have earned certifications and professional designations in their areas. Dr. Beth Brockman, Assistant Superintendent for Employee Services, will introduce these dedicated employees.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to recognize some pretty significant accomplishments of various staff members within our Human Resources and Employee Services Division. We do have 3 who are not able to be here tonight, so I'm going to focus on those who are. Our first is Stacy Antello. Stacy has been certified with her national certification for school nursing. This is above and beyond the call of duty, if you will, for our school nurses, in that it required not only being a serving school nurse and having served in that capacity for at least 1,000 hours and at least 3 years in that capacity, but also the successful completion of a test, national certification test, that required quite a bit of studying that I'm quite confident we would not have passed. So we are very, very honored to have Stacy having completed this pretty significant achievement, and very appreciative of her efforts on the part of our students in our schools and school health. Next, I have 3 individuals, Alex Juarez, Clint Poole, and Darcy Miller. Can you get a little wave? That have achieved their SHRM Certified Professional, and SHRM stands for the Society of Human Resource Management. It is not education specific. It is industry specific for human resources. It is based on global research and components and requirements required of practicing HR professionals at all levels. It again requires a certain set of knowledge, strategies, and competencies that are assessed through exams. These are not easy things to pass, and many times your education, human resource staff members have to seek additional training and knowledge outside of the education or school realm to be successful on these tests. We are definitely benefited by their efforts to seek this industry standard. And last but not least, we have 4 individuals, Bill, Suzanne, who's not able to be here this evening, Clint Poole, and Melissa Cobb, who have all earned their Professional Human Capital Leader in Education certification. It is a mouthful. It requires pretty intense coursework and training, resulting in an exam that must be passed, focused on human resource skills in the education setting. And actually, Bill, Clint, and Melissa were all in a pilot group that aided in the development and feedback on the creation of this certification. And their feedback was instrumental in continued adjustment of the certification for those who would follow them. Plano is unique in that we have so many who have sought this high level of certification to bring greater service to our campuses and ultimately to our students. And I would like to personally congratulate them and thank them for that service and many hours of studying outside of their work time. So thank you. Can we get a photo?
Do you want them with us or do you want them separate? Congratulations to all of you, and thank you for seeking this additional certification. It just benefits us so much, and I know it's a big investment in your time, and we're very proud of you. Sarah, do you have anything you want to add?
I just want to say thank you so much. I know how hard everyone works and all the hours that you put in during the day. So to take this on and grow yourself professionally on your own time is an asset to the organization and the students and the teachers that we serve. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. We now move to another recognition item. It happens to be School Board Appreciation Month. So I will now invite Carla Oliver to introduce the recognition of the 2018 Texas School Board Recognition Month.
Thank you, President Bender. We are very thankful to all of you for your service throughout the year. And of course, as a district, we welcome the opportunity to formally say thank you for serving as a trustee. I would like to ask at this time if you would notice that you have a box of truffles from the culinary arts students that were introduced to you earlier. Again, your dedication and willingness to serve as advocates for our children and for public schools is strongly appreciated. We hope that you enjoy this token of appreciation from our district. We also have others that are here to recognize you later in our agenda. So again, we ask that as advocates for public education, we know that you ensure that today's students are prepared to be productive citizens and the leaders of tomorrow. And we sincerely thank you for your service, your leadership, and your vision. And at this time, I would invite our audience to join me and my fellow cabinet members to please join me in applauding our Board of Trustees. Thank you for indulging us in that.
Okay, thank you. And Carla, for my clarification, at this time, are we to entertain the council member from the city of Richardson?
We are. Richardson Council Member Bob Doobie is here this evening to present a proclamation from the city of Richardson for the Plano ISD trustees. So thank you for being here.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate you allowing us to join your party tonight. I'm sorry I didn't bring truffles, but I did bring a proclamation from our mayor, city of Richardson, Paul Volcker. And from a personal note, I want to thank you for your hard work, your dedication, and passion for the students in Plano ISD. Recently, I retired as an educator with 40 years of experience, so I truly understand what you do, how hard you work, and the students of Plano are very lucky to have you. So, on behalf of the City of Richardson, the city staff, and the City Council, and specifically Mayor Paul Volker, I'd like to read this proclamation. Bear with me, I just got elected this past spring, so this is my first proclamation, so if I mess up a whereas or something, forgive me, okay? After 40 years, I might ought to put my glasses on, okay? Okay, the City of Richardson, Texas. Whereas the mission of public schools is to meet the diverse educational needs of all children and to empower them to become competent, productive contributors to a democratic society and ever-changing world. And whereas local school board members are committed to children and believe that all children can be successful learners and that the best education is tailored to the individual needs of the child. And whereas local school board members work closely with parents, educational professionals, and other community members to create the educational vision we want for our students. And whereas local school board members are responsible for ensuring the structure that provides a solid foundation for our school system. And whereas local school board members are strong advocates for public education and are responsible for communicating the needs of the school district to the public and the public's expectations to the district. Now, therefore, I, Paul Volker, Mayor of City of Richardson, Texas, do hereby declare the month of January 2018 as School Board Recognition Month in the City of Richardson, Texas, and urge all citizens to join me in recognizing the dedication and hard work of the local school board members and in working with them to mold an education system that meets the needs of both today's and tomorrow's children. Signed by Paul Volker, January 16, 2018. Thank you all very much. We appreciate all you do. Thank you. One other thing I would like to invite y'all. January 13th is the State of the City by our mayor, and if y'all are interested or have the time to join us, we'd love to have you, and you can contact our city manager's office. We'd love to have you come, and we will save a seat for you. So thank you very much.
Councilman, I think we might have a few comments for you to share with you.
I would love to.
I'll start with Interim Superintendent Sarah Bonser.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening and taking the time out of your busy schedule to represent the City of Richardson and supporting our school board. I know I speak for the administration and the staff and the students in this district that what everyone sees on Tuesday night is only a fraction of the real work behind the scenes that this board does. And I want you to know how much I appreciate each board member for your service to the students in this district, because you do truly put them first in all of your decisions, and we appreciate that. So thank you so much for your time, your service, your passion, your dedication, and thank you for publicly recognizing them. They deserve every ounce of praise they get.
I agree with you, and you're very welcome.
Thanks so much.
Nancy, do you have anything to say?
Well, I appreciate you being here, and you know I'm the liaison to the City of Richardson, so we see each other quite often. We totally appreciate you coming out here on a cold night to give us this recognition, and we appreciate it wholeheartedly. Thank you so much.
And I would like to send a message back to Mayor Volker that we really enjoy a very positive, collaborative working relationship with the City of Richardson, and we're very grateful for that. We appreciate that you have an education connection with the liaison from our organization, and every time we ask for partnership with the City of Richardson, they respond. So just in return, we express our gratitude as well.
You're welcome, and please know all actions on our behalf are sincere, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
You betcha.
Now it is our turn to turn our attention and provide a recognition to the City of Plano Parks and Recreation Department. Carla Oliver will introduce the Plano Parks and Recreation Department recognition. Ms. Oliver.
Thank you. In recognition of our relationship with the City of Plano, we would like to take this opportunity to recognize the Parks and Recreations Department 50-year anniversary with a resolution. So I would like to invite Robin Reeves, the current Parks and Recreation Director, to come forward and introduce those who are attending with you, and then we'll follow up with the remainder of the recognition.
Well, my name is Robin Reeves, Director of Parks and Recreation. First, I want to thank the Board of Trustees for recognizing the Parks and Recreation Department tonight and recognizing the history that we have of cooperation between the city and the school district. It's been very important to all of us over the years, and I have a number of people here that we'd like to introduce. I'm going to ask them to go ahead and, if you would, come on up front. And Rutledge, come on up too. And I'll introduce each one here in just a moment. Maybe stand, yeah, just stand there. So I'll start with Doug Shockey, who is one of our current Parks and Recreation Planning Board members. Doug. And then I'm sure most of you probably know Rutledge Haggard, who was a former Board of Trustee member, and I think Rutledge was one of those people who was really instrumental in helping to develop the cooperative effort between the school district and the city of Plano, working on some of the early master plans that planned schools and parks together and joint use of many of the facilities we have. And so I want to thank Rutledge for being here tonight. And then I'm going to come around here so I can see everyone. I'll start with Amy Fortenberry, who's a former Director of Parks and Recreation from 2009 to 2016. And then I'm going to introduce, I'm going to skip around a little bit. Don Wendell was Director of Parks and Recreation from 1986 until 2009, 23 years, I believe. So between Don and Amy, about 30 years of history with the Parks and Recreation Department. And then I'm also going to introduce Jim Fox, who was Park Services Manager for about 30 years, a very important part of the cooperation between the city and the school district. And then in a minute, the proclamation will mention that at one time, the city had recreation centers that were operated out of Clark, Vines, and Williams High Schools. We have 3 staff members that are still with the city of Plano who actually worked at those school-based recreation centers. Vicki Hamrick, Kayan Parham, and Jennifer Dooley all worked at those school-based recreation centers. So I want to thank them all for being here tonight, and they've all had a part in the cooperative relationship between the school district and the city of Plano. So, you know, I'll just mention one other person who couldn't be here tonight and is no longer with us, but Bob Woodruff was Director of Parks and Recreation from 1969 until 1982. And Bob, along with Dr. Wayne Hendrick, who was school board superintendent at that time, was really instrumental in developing a lot of these cooperative relationships, whether it was joint uses of pool facilities, tennis courts, joint land purchases around the city, and many other things. And from what I understand, those early agreements were just a handshake between Dr. Hendrick and Bob Woodruff. And yet today we're still enjoying the benefits of many of those relationships. And of course, Amy and Don continued those relationships and expanded them. But I believe that those relationships over the years have helped us avoid duplicating facilities and just making the absolute best possible use we can out of our resources, and hopefully saving our taxpayers quite a bit of money over the years because of that relationship. So again, I want to say thank you to the Board of Trustees, and thank you for having us here tonight.
Now, at this time, I'm going to invite Board Secretary Nancy Humphrey to read the resolution to you, and then she will join you down at the podium to present it.
All right, we've got a lot of whereases here, but they're good ones. Whereas the Plano Parks and Recreation Department is celebrating its 50th anniversary during 2018, whereas the Plano Independent School District and the department have a long history of cooperative programs and facilities. Whereas the district and department jointly purchased numerous school park sites which are used for elementary schools and neighborhood parks. Whereas the department operated recreation centers at Vines, Clark, and Williams High Schools for many years. Whereas the district uses department indoor swimming pools for district swim teams. Whereas the district and department have also shared athletic fields, tennis courts, and other facilities. And whereas the district and department have received national recognitions for these cooperative programs. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Plano Independent School District does hereby convey special recognition on the Plano Parks and Recreation Department's 50th anniversary and expresses appreciation to the department for its programs and services. Adopted this 16th day of January 2018 by the Plano ISD Board of Trustees, signed by Missy Bender, President, and myself, the Secretary of the Board of Trustees. Congratulations and thank you for this long, continued relationship that we have.
I have to say I enjoyed using the Recreation Center at Williams in the late 70s when I used to play there in the summertime.
Here's to another 50 years. Congratulations and thank you for being here tonight.
So Missy, to tack on your comment, I took swim lessons at Williams in the late 70s, yeah.
Maybe our past.
Yeah.
I'll also add my personal thanks. My daughter, who danced for 16 years, got her start at Clark in one of the classrooms upstairs using a desk as her first bar. I still have that picture. And then she ended up an officer for Plano West. So thank you so much for what you do for kids.
Congratulations, and I want to also say to you, to the City of Plano, your department and all other departments, what great partners you are with the school district as well. Whenever we're asking for your support, as we did with the Fine Arts Center partnership, with the Parks collaboration on the back end, the city's always willing to respond. We're very grateful. Thank you.
And you know, typically in January, everybody has the New Year resolution. And the New Year resolution is to start working out, right? And that New Year resolution ends up by mid-February. My family has a family membership with Parks and Recreation. We went there, I think, for the last 3 years. In almost every facility that you have, every park that you have. My wife and I are very familiar with the staff that opens Tom Muhlenbeck at 5 a.m. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. We will now move to the regular public comment portion of our agenda. For the public comment portion of our agenda, the board has public comment cards.
No, don't go.
That are accepted from 6 to 7 p.m. Cards are not accepted after 7 p.m. and are not transferable to other parties or speakers. All cards were collected and given to Carla Oliver or a representative of the Communications Department who will present the speakers during this time. Ms. Oliver, do we have any speakers for public comment?
We do, and they are both non-agenda.
Okay, thank you. The non-agenda comments come at the end of the meeting. At that time, I will read some descriptive words that will help you to understand how you can address your comments appropriately. Therefore, at this time, we will move forward to the consent agenda. This includes personnel recommendations, minutes of previous meetings, bids, purchases, and construction items. Are there any requests to remove an item or items from the consent agenda for further discussion? Hearing none, may I entertain a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 8 relates to items for discussion and action, where these items request a decision and closure is required. We have 3 items in this category. The first of these 3 is a recommendation to terminate employment of a term contract employee. Dr. Brotman.
Administration is recommending approval of a proposed termination of a term contract employee.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the recommendation to send notice of proposed termination?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. The next item is related to the consideration and possible approval of a board member appointment to the Board of Trustees. At the November 28, 2017 work session, the board accepted the resignation of Trustee Greg Meyer, which resulted in a vacancy in place 6. Following that, the board developed a process and a timeline to consider the appointment of a candidate to fill the place 6 open seat on this board. I'll briefly walk you through the process and the timeline that we developed and followed. On December 7th, we met and developed a candidate questionnaire and timeline. On December 11th, the application process opened. On January 3rd, the application process closed. On January 8th, trustees reviewed applications and selected candidates for interview. On January 12th, trustees interviewed candidates and began deliberation. On January 14th, trustees continued to interview and we deliberated our selection. And this evening, we reached January 16th, which was posted as a potential new trustee appointment. The board received 20 applications, and we want to thank all of the applicants for their willingness to serve and to submit an application. It was definitely a lengthy application, and it took a real investment of your time and energy, and we're very grateful for that. The board has now completed the process. I will now entertain a motion to appoint a new member to fill the open seat, place 6 on this board.
I move that we appoint Jerry Chambers to the Board of Trustees, place 6.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand. The motion passes unanimously. Jerry Chambers, congratulations. Jerry, we're now prepared to swear you in. Please join Denise Gillespie over here at the podium. And if you have family members or friends that have joined you and would like to support you at this time, they're welcome to join you as well. Following the swearing-in process, Jerry, you'll be given the opportunity to be seated immediately at the first seat next to Tammy. So we'll complete this process, and then we'll have you be seated thereafter.
All right, thank you. Congratulations. If you will please raise your right hand and place your left hand on the Bible, and I just simply bid you, if you will read the statement of officer down to here, please.
I, Jerry Chambers, do solemnly swear that I have not directly or indirectly paid, offered, promised to pay, contributed, or promised to contribute any money or thing of value, or promised any public office or employment for the giving or withholding of a vote at the election at which I was elected, or as a reward to secure my appointment or confirmation, whichever the case may be, so help me God.
And if you will read the oath of office, please.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, I, Jerry Chambers, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of Plano ISD School Board Trustees of the state of Texas, and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of the state, so help me God.
I have a few housekeeping items I need for you to sign for me, please. This is just the signature if you want to sign this, the oath of office. President Bender, did you want Ms. Chambers to go ahead and take a seat?
Yes, if you're agreeable, we're prepared to seat you right now.
I'm agreeable.
I'll be agreeable.
Okay. So I know that you don't have agenda in front of you, so just follow along.
I'll share.
You'll share. Okay. Thank
There's
you.
no microphone either.
Yeah.
We can scoot.
Okay. So congratulations, and again, the board wants to reiterate how grateful we are to all of the very qualified candidates who applied. Our community is better because each of you is so willing to make a tremendous contribution on top of what all of you already do. So thank you very much. I want to give a round of applause to welcome Jerry, and I want to give a round of applause to thank all of the very qualified candidates. All right, the third item on our our list of action items is related to a concussion oversight team. Dr. Carrie Cooper will introduce the discussion regarding the revision of the concussion oversight team. Dr. Cooper.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. Give you a little bit of background before I ask that you approve our proposal of the oversight team members. The original concussion oversight team is part of the Section 38 of the Education Code, where the state had required school districts to approve a oversight committee that would implement or come up with the return to play protocol. So other than that, that was their primary purpose, and that was in the back in 2011, going into 2012 school year. So what we are going to do is, for a combination of things, obviously our prevention management and efforts toward concussions over these last few months, and as we continue that effort, we would like to use the oversight committee on a regular basis, and this comes out of conversation and recommendation from our SHAC committee as well, so we can utilize the skill set that those individuals have. And then the other part of that is, because it has been a few years since the original oversight team was put in place, we have had some change in staff, but we also have another physician that we would like to add to Dr. Jenkins as the membership. So anytime we have new members on the committee, it does ask for board approval as our recommendation. So that's a little bit of background on why we're bringing this to you. Doing so will also help us continue our efforts and really go above and beyond, because once I mentioned earlier, the oversight team, their primary purpose was the return to play protocol, but we would really like for them to give some input on best practices, the research that is out there in the industry, the things that they come across, both from a physician standpoint and also our athletic trainers. So we have 2 physicians and then 3 athletic trainers. Having 2 physicians is also above and beyond what the requirement is, which is just have 1. But with this new member, that's really going to, I think, be a huge benefit to the process. So we appreciate the SHAC committee's interest and ongoing recommendations and those conversations that we have with them. And we would, at this time, like to make the recommendation and that you approve the membership as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the Oversight Committee as presented?
I move we approve the Oversight Committee as presented.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Raise your hand. All opposed? It's okay if you want to abstain, since this is your first thing.
Okay, that's fine. That would be wise.
Okay, so we have 5 in favor, and do we have any abstentions? We have 1 abstention. Motion passes.
So would that be 6?
6. I'm sorry, I'm used to counting 6. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pass, and 1 abstention. Motion passes. Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment, if I may. Thank you for all the work that you've done to coordinate this. And I know this is an area of a lot of research. There's still so much that's unknown about concussions, and I'm glad that we have the expertise we have here in the district, and we can support the health of our children in all of their events, whether they're sports or cheer or theater. We have kiddos that need to be cared for in this return to play. Thank you.
Now we'll turn our attention to item 9 related to reports, updates and status reports. We have 2 items in this category, one related to dashboard and one related to budget. So we'll begin with the district dashboard update, and Dr. Dash Wersinger, Senior Executive Director of Assessment, Research, and Program Evaluation, will provide an overview of internal dashboards that are available for district and campus staff, and he will discuss external dashboard options for parents in the community.
Good evening, Board President. So the topic, and it's kind of a broad topic that we can hopefully have some sort of a discussion and as well as a presentation. So please ask a question as we go. I will stop and explain and how it works. So when we talk about dashboards, in a school district, we have hundreds of metrics out there, 72 schools in the district, including the early childhood and Gwen. So there is really a large amount of data, and how we share these internally as well as externally, it's a very broad topic. There are a lot of constituents involved from the internal perspective as well as external perspective. So hopefully I will kind of cover, maybe touch base so that if you have any questions, just you can kind of interrupt me and kind of ask a question. So why do we even have dashboards? It's kind of a broad question. But the key thing here is how strategic we are, how proactive we are looking forward. So these may be things that are tied to our initiatives and district goals. We can have dashboards that are looking backwards, multiple years. And then we can also have dashboards that are current, kind of what's the current status and in the short term. So when you discuss dashboards, this is why this topic could be really broad in terms. And we've had internal discussions on how we want to craft it. And external dashboards, it's a very large topic. It's really in the education field, it's like $100 million industry on dashboards. So things can get really complicated. So let's talk a little bit about internal dashboards. And I'm going to talk about this in terms of slides, because the reason I kind of have to use slides here is the way we structured our dashboards internally is you get a big picture and you can very quickly get all the way down to the kid level. So it was made for internal consumption. It is, we had principals and teachers involved in the development of these dashboards. So I'm going to talk this in terms of slides, but when you talk about external dashboards, maybe I'll be able to kind of demonstrate some. So what do we currently have? So right now, any principal can log in, or an assistant principal or a counselor at a campus can log into our data system and run different types of enrollment reports. They can group them, they can filter them, they can pick a grade. They want to see kid who is on free or reduced lunch, who is Asian, who is in the bilingual program, who is at risk, and they can do like 8 different filters and get down to a list of kids, handful of kids that they want to target. So we have a STAAR performance report that can kind of do the same thing, but based on STAAR results. Remember, that's kind of looking backwards. We have an RTI dashboard where we track all the RTI interventions for our students. So the process is, once a student is identified for Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 interventions at the school, they set performance goals for that kid. Let's say within these 3 weeks, this is the RTI program, these are the strategies, and we can monitor their weekly instruction, and the teachers can enter them and see how well they're progressing. And there's a dashboard associated with it that tells you how many kids that came into RTI, how many kids that left RTI, how many that are continuing. The fourth bullet there, projecting STAAR performance from MAP, we've had MAP reports, but they were kind of hard copy PDF versions. And right now we are in development to make it more dynamic and more user-friendly on our standard data platform. So how did we kind of decide on these 4 things to concentrate internally? Well, we talked to a lot of principals, and we kind of arrived at a right balance of, when is something too much and when is something too little. So it was, do we provide the right data was very important here. And we also want data to be comparable. So for example, it is very hard to take two schools and compare even at a very high level. For example, once you get, let's say I will pick two schools, Renner and Henry. Well, they may look pretty similar at a very high level, but when you get down to course level, when we do like what percentage of ELL students, where are the economically disadvantaged students, we really want that comparisons to take place. Well, ELL students at Renner versus ELL students at Henry. We want economically disadvantaged students. So that comparisons needs to be built, and these kind of dashboards that we build gives the opportunity for them to do that comparison, so that instead of comparing one whole school versus another, because we know about 10–15% of the kids will be GT, there will be kids in the honors curriculum, there will be kids in the regular curriculum. So that comparison, so if I want to compare English 7 performance, I want to compare English 7 regular class in this school versus how that another class. So that's kind of the way that we build the dashboard, so to get that comparison levels. For example, this is a snapshot of a campus. By the way, this is a sample campus here. So you get grade by grade information, and any color segment or graph on this dashboard is clickable. So if I click grade 4, it will filter everything on this page for grade 4. And if I go and on special ed, I click yes, it will select grade 4, all kids who are special ed. And it will kind of drill down. You can keep drilling down like that until you kind of want your target population and so on. On the STAAR performance, this is looking backwards. We have regular annual data, meets approaching grade level, meets grade level, master's grade level. It's very important to recognize that there are 3 standards on STAAR, because our expectations for each kid is to progressively be at the highest standard. So we not only measure 1, we measure all 3. Then you can look at STAAR for multiple years. And for example, in this graph, the green is percentage of students who are at the highest standard, and blue is students who are at the meets grade level standard and approaches grade level standard and not meeting standard. So it is, for example, this is a real school, and you can see the progression of green changing from year to year to year. And this is, this is a very nice example where annual progress is being made from year to year.
Dash, I have a question. Can this information be drilled down to the classroom?
Yes, this can be drilled down to the classroom that these kids were in last year, because this is looking back. Now they can look the other way too. A teacher can look at their current class and see what the historical STAAR performance is the other way.
Okay, so this question really arose in my mind on the previous slide regarding enrollment. So could a principal take the enrollment information and break it down by classroom to see kind of how the class is, the students in the class and how that class is staffed currently, or is it always looking back?
The enrollment is always current. Enrollment is, for example, if I ran this report today, it will be yesterday's enrollment in Plano ISD. So we can break it down up to the grade level. Now if that's on the dashboard. There are other data tools available that can do exactly what you're asking. You can go to a teacher's classroom and see the demographic pattern of the classroom. Technically, it's in the same platform, so it's just pretty much switching modules. This is another version of another way of looking at the STAAR data. This is just similar to the enrollment. And let me describe how this thing works. That the donut shape on the right is the proportion of students who are meeting the STAAR different standards. The purple, blue, green, and the red. And this tool was made to drill down to see where our high passers, low passers, failures, those students are coming from. So for example, I can, again, all these color segments are clickable. If I want to see what is the demographic pattern of my students who are failing in the classroom at that grade level, I pick that red. Then I can drill down from subject to grade to ethnicity to special ed to LEP and economically disadvantaged, and it will continuously narrow down the list of students that are here. So basically, if I run this for a campus, you start with grades 3, 4, and 5. Remember, we are looking backwards. So grade 3 kids don't have. This is just their 5th grade is gone. So I start with a group of kids, let's say currently in 4th grade, who are previous year STAAR. If I want to target a group of kids, I can drill down and identify who those 5 kids are that may have very specific and narrow need. So that concept of a dashboard being able to drill down is kind of what we've stuck to, because that's what makes data actionable. If I give this report and says compared to a school that looks like you, honestly, there's not much, even a great administrator can do. Eventually you had to drill down and find out who these kids are, what their educational patterns were, whether the student was bilingual or ESL and exited the program, was he a former speech kid or special ed kid. So all that information kind of needs to be tied in to make the RTA plans actionable. You can drill these things down many ways. For example, here you are looking at by demographic patterns already pre-computed. So by passing rates, and this is one that we really spend a lot of time in Plano, because this is about growth. There's a lot of numbers here, but this may be a whole. We train principals on this for a whole day, a whole hour. So the idea here is this: if a kid starts out at a certain level in 3rd grade, we want that kid to grow in 4th grade, and how well that student growth is being tracked. So it doesn't matter whether the kid starts out as a high passer or whether the student is even starting out as a student who didn't meet the grade level standard. We want that student to grow, and we can track the growth on this report, and this benchmarks a campus's, let's say, 3rd grade growth with respect to all campuses in the Plano with 3rd graders that started out at the same point. So we group kids together and track the growth and says, you have 100 kids in this school, and there are 500 kids similar to that in the district. Now, we want the growth to happen everywhere, and we compare that campus's growth to that remaining 500 in the district to see how we benchmark the growth. And each of these color bands here are clickable. So they want to see kids who didn't grow, they can click that red band, and it will drill down and show who these students are.
What are the abbreviations under the levels?
So
LIM, EXP, ACC?
So that is limited growth, expected growth, and accelerated growth.
Thank you.
No, everybody grows in a bell curve. You can't beat an average, right? So there will be a certain proportion that will lie. So we want to compare those bell curves for that school with the rest of the district, with similar students that started out at a similar point. So this is one of the most widely used reports, because this really, they can have a discussion back and says, what did we do with this group of kids to make a difference versus this group of kids that maybe had a hard time growing. The map dashboards, this is hopefully this will be operational in about 2 weeks. We are debating what colors to have. That's a really difficult task. Nobody can agree on colors. So this is kind of looking forward, because we want our MAP is our normative growth measure. I think everybody's familiar with the MAP growth curves. So it's a vertical scale, but what we are looking at is looking at kids in quintile bands in MAP, and how that quintile band relates to STAAR performance. So for example, in order for students to have about a 70% chance of passing STAAR, they need to be above the 20th percentile on MAP. So when we look at that group of those light blue kids on the right, in kindergarten, that 9%, that's a group of kids who are in the lowest 5th quintile. So the hope is that by the time you get to 3rd grade, that group gets smaller, smaller, and smaller, because that's the potential group that will have the difficult time. Now, we will always have kids who are below, but the question is how to get the growth there. Then MAP also gives a projected STAAR performance for each of the different standards. So for example, this report will give you, at a particular grade level, what proportion will be expected to meet the masters and meets and approaches grade level standard.
Pardon me, Dash, since we can't use STAAR until 3rd grade, are we using MAP in the same way in K through 3, where we can compare growth for children? So we could.
In fact, that STAAR report that you saw, where we measure growth by prior standard to current standard, that's exactly identical report for kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. In fact, for until up to grade 8, where we look at the beginning and end of the year MAP scores and compare their growth from school to school.
It's going to be very powerful as we look at different pockets of kids across the district and compare schools. I'm very anxious to see that put into practice.
So the MAP reports will also be drillable, so that eventually you want to go from the kind of a sky level view all the way to the individual student level, so you can drill down by grade, by subject, by special ed, whether they are English language learners or economically disadvantaged to the student level. And so these 4 pieces will really complement each other, because STAAR will look backwards, our enrollment projections, distributions will kind of give you what the status and where the students are. MAP will kind of give us kind of an update to our prediction on STAAR. So I think, talking to principals, we kind of covered kind of all the bases here. And again, as I said, there are thousands more numbers in our office that we can make reports out of. The question is, how much of that can we kind of translate that to action and kind of make. You can remember there are other dashboards here which I didn't share. We give COGAT, which we pair with each one of these to track our cognitive ability of the students, all the way from 1st grade to 9th grade. So there are other dimensions regarding performance that, for example, they can bring into the conversation. So these reports are available for all principals and campus administrators at a campus and a grade level. And at the secondary campuses, all department chairs have access to these. And then teachers can run very similar reports for their own classrooms, looking at multiple years of STAAR. So for example, if you want to get how detailed, if you want to know, I'm teaching 7th grade math, item 10 on the STAAR test. My kids got stumped on that item 10. So a teacher has the ability to go look up that item 10 for her class, compare it to all the other students in that school who took item 10, and all the students in the district who took item 10, and see whether that same pattern of difficulty is available. So you can get to that level of granularity starting from the teacher dashboard. So
theoretically, if a teacher, a 7th grade math teacher's student struggled on item 10, and his or her colleagues' students did well, that teacher could know, then let me see what my colleagues are doing on this particular topic to inform my instruction.
Yeah, that's the exact idea. Because, you know, if my score is lower and everybody else is higher, then there's something to learn. Right. It could be the other way around too, you know, because you can compare, and you can do that for, in fact, by classrooms. For example, if I'm teaching an honors class and a regular class, I can compare my honors classroom performance on item 10 versus my regular. So you can do it by individual student by a classroom or all my classes.
So Dash, is this in use on our campuses now, or is it being rolled out?
Everything I mentioned except Map to STAAR is currently in use, and they've been in use for at least 2 years in different forms. We migrated our data platform. Yeah, so this is our 3rd year in our new data platform, and things like, for example, getting down to the item level, it was, you know, that's very, very heavy lifting. When we went from our internal produced data system, we just didn't, it was simply too expensive to maintain because there you need too many broad skills and too many people to maintain a system like that.
So was this developed internally, or is it a licensed product?
It is a licensed product, but part of when we did our contract, we translated some of the things that we really liked in our old system. They promised to implement it as a managed product. We gave our designs, but we didn't put any copyrights on it. But, you know, so they didn't charge us extra, but they can sell it to others.
So I think, to echo Tammy's point, I think this is maybe one of the most powerful tools that I've ever seen the district roll out for staff. Do they have access to this? Does staff have access to this year round in summertime?
Yes.
I mean, to me, I know, you know, when you're in the midst of trying to teach every day, it's hard to go back and do this sort of self-reflection, but I would see this as being phenomenally powerful for a teacher to sit down in June and kind of go back and review how they've done, see where they, you know, can improve, see what they need to do. I mean, I see the potential of this is limitless.
So summer access, so there are some logistical issues with that because of rollover, but we freeze the system on June 2nd so that the teachers have access to everything until August 1st. So then on August 1st, we roll over everything to the new school year so that they have the ability to see their new students and see their incoming data. Because we want those 2-3 weeks for them to be studying kids who are coming into their classroom as well.
So 2 questions. Do you have any way to gauge how much is it being used? And at what levels? Teachers, team leaders, principals?
Well, we don't have a direct way, basically page count, page hits, but we know how many times they log in, log out. Mm-hmm. It is hard not to be on it. The reason is because pretty much anything they want is on it. So they have to go, for example, if they want to see semester exam data, like when teachers enter their grade books, they do have to go to this system and look at the student scores, see how they performed, and then translate those scores into their grade book. As a practice, most of the work that we want our teachers to be doing, planning for the work, looking back and see how they are doing on assessments, this is where they go to look at it. So it is, we don't know, but exactly this campus has this many participation rate, but it is hard for a teacher not to go there because all assessment results are here, including gifted and talented and lot of ELL, English language learner information.
Do they get training?
They get year-round training. There are continuous webinars that are being offered. There are online webinars that are already pre-recorded. They can watch. They get credit whether they do it face-to-face, online, or they preview a webinar that's already done. They can earn professional development time based on that learning as far as they have validation. So these also count towards their flex time, when we structure professional development. These training modules there are about, I think there are 11 training modules that are available for each segment of this platform. So each one you can earn professional development credit also.
Thank you.
So when you talk about rollover, can a teacher save information from the previous year so that the teacher can compare from one class to another how their students are learning?
So when rolling over doesn't mean that the teacher doesn't have access to a last year's classroom.
Okay.
But they can look at their prior performance for their students. Okay. We let them roll over just 1 year, because there are certain laws about what teachers can access when, but we let them roll over for 1 year. They can see the data for one prior year and their current students.
Dash, is this most beneficial for elementary teachers, or is it equally beneficial to secondary?
For elementary and middle, it is the same benefit because they have the same level of performance measures. For example, we give K through 8 map, STAAR is there for 3 through 8. When if you ask me how about high schools, senior highs, then a lot of their assessments and performance measures are now teacher-based, they are not standardized. Yeah. So there are the only thing available is EOCs, which is just 5 of them, and SAT and AP. So it gets a little bit, scarier, the usability of the data at the high school level, but K8 is the same.
So it would seem to me, I remember when we first rolled out MAP, and even Jerry, I remember the training that you did of teachers at Wells about teaching them how to interpret and what to do with MAP at that time. So this is like the next evolution of not just one child's MAP, but all, MAP and STAAR for a group of kids. Related to the training, I can imagine that teachers would like to collaborate with each other. Can you help me, sort this out? Are we seeing, I know we have efforts this year to really invest in the professional development and so forth. Are we finding that teachers are needing more time to help one another in this interpretation and action plan development? Or is it just an individual task that one is doing in isolation?
The Great Tide, for example, with our extended planning time, when the principals, depending on how they launched out, a lot of the campuses, first hour we analyze the data, the second hour we plan. So depending on the modules, on the model they kind of launched it at their campus, this was using the data was the beginning. We are working with our focus schools when the curriculum planned out their planning guides and collaboration time. Looking at data is a key segment of that work when they meet at common planning time. So, this definitely makes it easier because they can pull it out on a tablet or on their phone or on their desktop or on their Chromebook. Now they could have these things, some teachers still love their Excel spreadsheets and their color codes. You can bring it because each one of these reports you can download to Excel and you can do your own color code. And we were designed it that way. So, so either way they do it, as far as they use the data appropriately, that's what we want. Now, is it equally the same in every school? No, but that's, so for example, this Saturday we have our Flex training day, and we are offering classes on the data platform on teachers to get additional training if they need.
This is a very exciting tool, and I see how our educators can use it to increase and improve their pedagogy. I think we have a challenge as a board because it can help us improve our resource allocation. I think we're going to learn some things that will show that we need to move money into maybe some different areas, and I hope we're brave enough to do it.
So to transition from internal dashboards, so I think one topic was external dashboards. Now this is, I mean, obviously this is, it's not, I might start a new presentation because the audience is completely different. That's key. Obviously the school board, parents, community, and most calls that we get about data are parents that moving into Plano from out of state and other areas. So the key thing here is kind of how you kind of manage it. Again, the number of data points is important because you want to emphasize a certain core set of data that is most probably comparable in a broad range of districts, definitely our competitors. And it kind of, the data will always kind of be looking backwards because the predictive power of doing something at this level, we can predict whether a kid passes STAAR or not, looking at map and COGAP, things like that. But doing it at a large scale at a school level, it really, you lose any value in it. So we do want it looking backwards, and I want to share a couple of options that are available. This is a product that we are thinking of implementing, and this is, in fact, this came out of Educational Service Center Corporation around Victoria. And this gives a very nice quick look of where the campus is in terms of accountability. So this is, for example, the real Plano ISD 2017 data here. It gives you the total number of students, graduates, college-ready graduates. That 50.5 is percentage of students in dual enrollment and advanced courses. Degree plans, 4-year graduation rates. It compares the state to region to the district, and it gives the overall index scores for 2 years. There are a couple of things here which you can drill down. For example, at the district level, you can drill down to, I gave an example of EOCs here. So you can drill down to history, and you can see 2 years of data for the passing rates. There are a couple of other areas here. They also have staffing demographics and staffing years of experience that are available in this module. So this is something which we can use. So for example, if we are to do something like this, it is depending on the complexity, we can give a kind of an overview. This is a sample page we created, and for example, I will run the report for Christie here live, and this is Christie Elementary's last year's accountability report, and then you can drill down here and run several reports. Let's say at approaches grade level standard, it will give you by student group for 2 years. Christie is an elementary, so they don't have EOCs, and there are some employee reports that we can run. So years of experience, it can give. Now this is all publicly available data. When the accountability reports come out, there are several outfits out there that will download the data and make these things available. So this is some options that we can explore for a district dashboard for external customers, so parents and community. If TEA also offers a variety of tools, for example, this is commissioners' kind of initiatives to have comparable tools out there. So you can run a district. I ran, for example, here, since I use Christie, I'm going to bring up Christie as a school. I picked the one in Plano. I don't want one in Frisco. And then, and you can compare Christie to any other district in accountability ratings in the state. But to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to use the 40 schools that the TEA chose as the closest to Christie. And let me pick Wells Branch in Round Rock ISD. And I can run the dashboard, and you can see this is comparing Christie to a campus that is very similar to Christie Elementary. So for example, in economically disadvantaged, Christie is 57, Wells Branch is 55, percentage of ELL learners, 27 versus 24. So depending on the metrics, you can make it pretty close. And it will tell you the accountability indexes for Christie in blue and Wells Branch in orange. So, these tools are currently available. So it will be just a matter of maybe embedding them in some of our platforms. It's also available, you can see, by subject, by student group, and by English language learners. So there are several tools that are available, if you want to explore like comparable tools to other districts. You can run similar ones to district comparisons also. That's the show part. If you have any questions,
I'm really glad that you came to present this dashboard, these options to us. What we're doing internally and what we could do externally. It helps us to stay really focused on our first mission, which is the academic achievement of our students and growing them in their learning, and staying on that task by having the ability to do the analysis to determine how we can improve what we're doing to reach children, and helping our community to understand, how does the campus that they're interested in perform, and how does that compare to others? Because everybody likes to compare and contrast. So I think this is very valuable information. I didn't know that we had this internally. So thank you for bringing this.
Okay, thank you.
Can I say something? Thank you, Dash, for the informative presentation. And these reports show that we are serious about accountability, and by providing very comprehensive data to our staff and teachers.
Thank you, Dash.
Thank you.
And Dash, I hope in a couple of years, a person moving into our community will pull up these and think, boy, every single school is a wonderful fit for my child. That's my hope.
At this time, we'll now begin our budget report. Randy McDowell will present the 2018-19 budget assumptions and the preliminary revenue estimates. Mr. McDowell.
Thank you, President Bender, members of the board. So tonight we're going to bring you a very preliminary big picture look at the budget. It is very early in the process, and so we want to show you the big moving parts of the budget. In the meantime, we're going to continue to work on the details and the plans that go behind the budget, and work on the budgeting of tens of thousands of account numbers. Some of the assumptions that we're looking at in this big picture budget is looking at enrollment decline of about 300 students, and that's not because necessarily we're declining as a district, but our larger grade levels are our higher grade levels are our larger grade levels. And so as those graduate out and our smaller grade levels come in on the bottom at kindergarten, we are seeing a decline as a result of that effect. The budgets, the numbers that I'm going to show you are primarily based on a property value growth for 2018 of 8% and maintaining a current debt M&O tax rate of $1.17. We did also have a couple of changes in the formulas that are going to impact us in the second year of the biennium. the Tier 2 Level 1 yield, and so that's the pennies between $1 and $1.06. The yield on those increased from 99.41 per weighted ADA per penny up to 106.28 is what's estimated, and that's going to generate an additional approximately $2.7 million. And so that's what we call the Austin yield, so that equalizes up to the wealth of where they're expecting Austin ISD to be. The other component in the formulas that's changing, as it always does in the second year of the biennium, is the per capita or available school fund is higher in the second year, and that's increasing from $206 per ADA up to $375 per ADA, and that's an additional approximately $8.6 million. The combination of those two is an addition of about $11.3 million for the coming year. So that's the good news. This one might give you a little bit of heartburn as we look at the recapture history. You can see back in 2013-14, our recapture was about 36 million. You can see how that steadily increased. The past year, we paid right at $105 million in recapture. This current year, we project that number to be up 50 million from the prior year at 155 million. And next year, I've given you a range. It's based on growth of a 0% growth up to a 12% growth. And again, we're basing our estimates right now on about an 8. They could come in stronger than that. But we're looking at recapture going up somewhere between 40 million and 62 million for next budget year. And the reason I put the 0 in there is just so you can see the lag effect of when values do go up one year, and if they were to flatten out the next year, you don't receive any more revenue because your taxes stay the same with no value growth, but your recapture would go up about 40 million. And so you can see if we ever do, when and if we flatten out, and the day will come that it will level out some, we will have a harder year that year. And like I say, for example, that would be a $40 million hit if that were the case. Now, that is not the case, as we project that number to come in at about 209 million in recapture for the coming year. If we look at any questions on that one?
That's an 8%?
That's an 8%, yes, and I'll show you those numbers right here. So in 2017-2018, the current year budget, our tax revenue is just over 572 million. Again, our recapture is just under 155 million. And so the net revenue that we keep on property taxes is about 417.8 million. The coming year, if our values do stay flat, our tax revenue would stay the same at 572 million. Our recapture would go up about 40 million, and so our total revenues would be at about just under 378 million. We're down about 40 million. And then we really go more into the growth percentages that we anticipate, somewhere between 6 and 12%. And I won't read all those numbers to you, but you can see the vast range in a 0% growth and a 12% growth after recapture. The difference between those two numbers is about 42 million, I believe. And if we look at just the 8% number, tax collections would be up to about 615 million. Recapture just under 210 million. Our net revenues would be 405. And so even with an 8% growth, our total revenues, just when you look at net tax collections, would be down about 12 million for the current year.
Randy, one question. The 12% assumption, that's 12% increase in value or in tax collections? Because it's not going to rise more than 10% year over year.
The 10% cap is on a household, and so
right.
Your total values can go up more than that if you have additional properties that are added in, whether they're residential or commercial. So the 10% cap is on a homestead, but a district's values can go up more than 10%.
Right, but when you have 12%, you included the fact that residential properties are not going to go by more than 10%.
That's right. That's just making an assumption that the overall values and overall taxes would go up 12%.
Because that means that commercial properties are going to go way more than 12%.
They could, or it's new properties that come
Okay.
in. That's typically one of the big drivers.
And only then our net revenue is going to be higher than this year.
That's correct. And that was one of the points. So you can see, to get back to net revenues approximately the same as they are current year, it would take close to a 12% increase. Any questions there? Does that give you a feel? I believe I told you in the last meeting that the biggest driver in this upcoming budget is going to be how property values come in. And that is because we do have a lag. We do have like a 10% increase from the prior year that's catching us in the values. Our recapture is going up significantly. And so it's really just a matter of how much of that will be made up in property value increases. And so I have visited with the appraisal district, and they are the ones that encouraged me that an 8% value growth was probably a good estimate. Again, it is very early in the process. Okay, now if we translate those to total budget numbers, the current year, the baseline budget, and I'm not going to read you all these numbers, but we've got local, state, federal, and other, and the total revenues on the current year are just under $650 million. Again, the recapture just under 155, and so we really have net revenues about $495 million. If we go off an 8% value increase, our local revenues would be $624.5 million. State revenues are up some. They're down some because our property value growth is hitting us. They're up because the factors that we talked about earlier on the yields that are increasing in the per capita. So overall, that's projected to go from 51.5 to just over 58 million. We're keeping federal revenue and the general fund the same, other resources the same. So total revenues just under 700 million. After recapture, it's 489.6 million. So you can see total revenues after recapture are down slightly on an 8% value increase.
Wait, don't leave that one yet.
Okay.
So, because I'm a numbers nerd and went through all this kind of stuff and went through some thought process and emailed Randy about this, because I wanted to think through what this really means, because we can get lost in numbers, right? We can get lost in it's $40 million on 580. That's not a whole lot, but it really is. And so the net revenue, the bottom line net revenue projected for 18-19 is a $5.4 million loss, which is a 1.1% drop. If you include inflation, so what our dollars can be spent on is average is about 3.2%. That's a little bit over a 4% loss of spendable purchasing power. So 4.3%, when you look at $5.4 million over our budget, the average teacher salary in this district is slightly under $56,000. That's 100 staff positions. So are we gonna cut a teacher out of every school because we have to give money to the state? I mean, because that's the reality of what recapture does to a district like this. It's death by 1,000 cuts, because this isn't the first time this has happened, and it's not the last time it'll happen. And so it's imperative. You know, Governor Abbott came out today with his plan to limit property tax growth, but it's imperative that they tackle school finance first, and we have to really make sure that that happens, and our constituents have to make sure that the people that we elect to go to Austin make that happen.
Well, David, one of the stickers on this is that the magic number that we're compared to that gets you into the property wealthy status, if you will, hasn't changed since, what, 2006? So as our rates, our property values continue to go up, we're still compared to a static number. That's why there's that dramatic increase in our recapture. And unless and until our legislators do tackle school finance, we won't see meaningful property tax reform and relief, and our taxpayers don't necessarily understand all of that. That's the hardest part. And I feel like it's our job to help educate our constituents so they know where their money is going and how it's being diverted.
Yeah, it's election season, it's primary season, so they're all going to be for property tax reform, and they're all going to be for education finance reform. And so the proof will be in the pudding. These people who get out of the primary and who get elected, we have got to hold them accountable to do what they say they're going to do.
And maybe ask some of these hard questions during the primary candidacy forums.
Yeah.
One point to make is when we talk about the minus $5.4 million in our net, that's while our citizens, our constituents are paying 8% more in property taxes. They're not paying less.
Those are great points, and you know, the underlying issue there is as local values go up, state funding goes down, and the state's the winner. The state budget is the winner in the equation, and so unfortunately, that's not always the picture that's painted. And if you read the press release today, that's not the picture that's painted. But in reality, that is the effect of that.
But other than that, it's a great system.
Not even.
This next slide just shows the budget and show it in revenues. It shows local, and then we've sectored off the recapture, and we also have the state and federal and the other sources. So the left-hand pie chart shows if you include recapture, just under 90% of our total budget is basically tax collections and local revenues. On the right-hand side, if we back out recapture, then of course the numerator and denominator change, and the state funding, the local funding portion of it drops to just under 85%. And you can see that the state, federal, and the other sources do increase slightly. The one on the right is really more representative of our true budget after we pay recapture. When we take the 17-18 baseline, is we try to get to a projected big picture, again, expenditure amount. The current baseline expenditure is just under $648 million. If we back out the level 2 requests that we have this current year, and just assume that we're not going to continue any of those, that would be about $600,000. The increase in recapture, again, at 8% is about 54.7 increase. We did plug in a number here for a compensation increase, and for every % of salary increase that we give, that's about $3.25 million. And so just for illustration purposes, we plugged in a 2%, and so that would cost the district about $6.5 million. If we can acquire about $500,000 in savings because of the enrollment decline on staffing ratios, then we factored that in. And then adding back in other increases or new level 2 requests, just an estimated number of $0.8 million or $800,000. With those assumptions, and again, it's very early in the process and a lot of work to do, that would take our total expenditures to $708 million, less recapture, and so our net expenditures would be $499.4 million. And then if we carry that over to the next slide, we talked about the net revenues down to $489.6 million. With those assumptions, expenditures at $499.4, early on we would be looking at about a $10 million deficit budget, just to give you an idea of where we're at. You know, I would project that, and from looking historically, even if we adopted a $10 million deficit budget, I would think we would come in close to balance, just because that's a fairly small percentage of a very large budget, and so I would expect that to come in close to balanced in reality at the end of that year. Any questions there?
Yeah, I wouldn't expect you to remember this or know this, but have we ever adopted a deficit budget? Do y'all recall?
I think we have.
Yeah.
Have we?
Yeah, because we rely on fund balance.
But yeah, we take.
The current year is approximately a $7.5 million amended budget.
Yeah.
$7.5 million deficit amended budget.
At the initial point, we adopted the deficit, and then and as we amended it, it was balanced?
No, it's currently a deficit of about $7.5 million.
Okay.
I believe it was approved at closer to a balanced budget.
Yeah. See, I would have to go back and look. I don't recall approving a deficit budget to start. I don't recall using fund balance unless it was back in 2011. I don't recall doing that in the interim. Maybe we have.
I think at times looking at the 2-year plan, 1 year might have been a deficit, but we thought over the 2 years it would be flat.
Yeah, but I think the plan there was that we knew what our average kind of our under budget number was, and that we would balance it out over the 2 years. I do recall Steve talking about that.
We can do some research on that and look back.
I mean, it's a little concerning that we're going to pull $10 million out of fund balance because, again, this is not a one-time thing. If this is going to be the norm, then our fund balance is going to, again, it's just going to dwindle away.
Right.
Sure, and part of the impact is we have the 10.6% value increase catching us in recapture, and we're projecting an 8% increase. And so that roughly 2.5% difference between what's catching us and what we would be going up is part of the impact, or a pretty significant part of the impact of why that's a deficit number. And so, you know, if you always want to grow, or financially you want to grow as much as you grew the year before or more, to have a better year than the year before. And so in the projections, we're actually looking at a decline based on this year's value. And in reality, it could come in stronger than that. So we won't get preliminary certified values until April 15th. That was moved up this last session. It used to be April 30th, and now it's going to be April 15th. So that'll give us a better idea.
I'm doing my best not to freak out on preliminary numbers, but I'm freaking out already.
And I just want to remind everyone that we've talked about the fund balance as a way to help some of these really struggling classrooms, these really struggling schools. We have a healthy fund balance because we've lived very economically, and I think at some point we're going to have to pay the piper. I mean, there are kids that need help and schools that need help, and we're going to have to be bold enough to spend some of the fund balance and or to dramatically change how we allocate resources.
On this next slide, we give you a fund balance history here, and so we go back to 2009 up through the past fiscal year, 2016, 2017. You can see fund balance has increased about 100 million, right at 100 million over that 9-year period. At the same time, the expenditure budget has increased about 180 million. A lot of that is because the increase in recapture. That, you know, back in 2009, it was a very small number, and so that's really driven that up. But if you look at the percentage of fund balance that we have in relation to the total budgeted expenditures, it's somewhat interesting that it's remained fairly constant with a low of about 28.2%, a high of 37.8% in 2012, and at the end of 2017 it was up almost back to 36%. And so it really hasn't varied as much as I thought it would have with the increase when you look at it by percentage or number of months operating. It's really been fairly constant over that 9-year period. So just so you get a better look at, fund balance has increased, also the budget has increased, and recapture has, as a result, the majority of that being recapture.
Randy, one question. On June 30th, 2017, we had 227.2. Between that and June of 2018, what happens to the fund balance? I mean, given timing of payments, does it go much lower than that? Does it not go lower than that?
Yes, that number, as far as, we've got two different things. We've got one that's cash balance, and we've got one that's fund balance. So we only compute fund balance at the end of a fiscal year once we close out the books. It does somewhat relate to cash flow, obviously.
Right.
And so our peak cash month, end of June is going to be stronger. We're going to use some of that cash in July, August, September until tax collections start coming in. We have recapture payments that we still have to make in July and August that are this year will be about $22 million each. And so yes, our cash balance does decline after fiscal year end until taxes start coming in December and January, and then it swings the other way. But yes, some of those funds are necessary for cash flow purposes through the fall.
Right, but how far do you think it's going to go?
How I just have to look historically. I mean, I would assume that number, as far as cash balances, could get, I'm really picking a number, I really did some calculating in my head, but you know, I would assume that could get down in the $150 million range, something like that.
Okay.
But at that time, if that happens in August or September, we don't really compute a fund balance. It's really more of a cash flow analysis at that time. Okay, and just some of the things that administration is going to be looking at in the finance department through the budget process. We'll continue to analyze the 2017-2018 budget. A lot of that is the new CFO getting familiar with where things are and how we budget, and so they're going to have to educate me there. We began a process of looking at federal funds and state allotments. Primarily starting out, that's going to be Title I as far as federal funds and how that's allocated out to Title I campuses, and also looking at state allotments and primarily compensatory education and how that is addressing and how it's allocated out to at-risk students. And so reviewing the methodologies there, some of that's under our control, some of that is not, especially on Title I, that's got to be allocated out in rank order. So a campus that has the highest free and reduced percentage has to receive the highest amount of money per free and reduced student. And so we have to scale that down, and of course we've got tools to do that. But really, the way Title I is allocated is somewhat out of our control because we have to follow the federal guidelines on that. And so we're being sure that we do follow those federal guidelines, and then looking again at compensatory education to be sure we're allocating that out based on at-risk students, and that it's being spent accordingly. So like I say, that's the start of looking at federal and state allotments, and those are two of the bigger ones, and those are two of the ones that do address high-need students for more than the other funds do. And so being sure that we're in compliance there. We're continuing to look for efficiencies, as we will continue to talk about. Staffing analysis, HR is doing a lot of work here to being sure that we're equitable as far as staffing. And when we aren't equitable, there's reasons. For example, it's a Title I campus that has more staff. Those staff have to be supplemental to staff on a non-Title I campus. And the same is true with some of the compensatory education requirements. And so we're just looking at, this is our base program. We equalize that based on the number of students per campus, similar grade spans, and then we look at what are we adding onto that campus and what funds are they coming out of. And then also the salary study is scheduled this spring for TASB to come in and compare us to our peer districts, and that report is planned to come to the board in March. Department budgets, those are getting underway as well, and those will be presented to the board in April. So we have a busy several months coming up here. And then as we, just real quick, back to the budget calendar, we can check off the first two now. In February, we'll be bringing you some peer information and trend analysis with how we are with some peer districts and how we are internally. Again, the March is the staffing and compensation review. April, we'll be bringing you the department budgets. May, the budget summary, and hopefully an adoption of a compensation plan. June, we'll have the public hearing and adopt the budget, and then in September, adopt the tax rate. Y'all are familiar with that. We do have one new board member that is the budget timeline. Are there any additional questions?
Just an additional warning, I just want you all to know, as you probably guess, I'm going to be highly interested in the staffing levels in March. I remember back when I first joined the board 8 years ago, we seemed to get more detail in terms of how many adults were actually in a given school, whether it's a teacher, a paraprofessional, a social worker, a family liaison. I hope we get that same level of granularity moving forward, because I think we've got some tough decisions to make. I would also love to see the staffing that we put in Head Start. I enjoy reading that report every time to see the wonderful things we bring to those kids and those families, all those wraparound services. And I'd like to at least do the analysis. If we were to look at our 3 early childhoods with one more coming along, what would staffing look like if we replicated that same level of wraparound services, because the kids are the same, they just don't happen to live near the east side. And so I think we need to at least have the numbers in front of us so we know what we can select moving forward. So I hope we do that in staffing.
Right, thank you, Randy. We'll look forward to seeing more of you every month. Item 10 is the conclusion of our public comment session. I understand we have 2 speakers. So previous to the announcement of the speakers and calling them forward, I'll read through the language that describes what will take. I want to give you some guidelines. Pursuant to board policies BED legal, BED local, and BED exhibit, the board may place reasonable restraints on the number, length, and frequency of presentations, so long as it does not unfairly discriminate among speakers based on their viewpoint. The board is not authorized to discuss or act on the public's comments or complaints if the subject is not on the agenda, which is the case at this time. If a member of the public or the board inquires about a subject for which notice has but not been given, the board may only make a statement of specific factual information, recite existing policy in response to the inquiry, or refer the person to a staff member for more information or assistance. If the subject of the public comment is already on the agenda for the meeting, the board may invite the speaker to stay until the board reaches that topic on the agenda. 30 minutes in total were allotted to hear persons who desire to make comments to the board. Persons who wish to participate in this portion of the meeting shall complete the appropriate public comment form before the meeting begins and indicate the topic about which they wish to speak. No presentation shall exceed 3 minutes. If you are not finished at the end of your 3 minutes, I will interrupt you so that we can move to the next person. Delegations of more than 5 persons shall appoint 1 person to present their views before the board. And finally, pursuant to Texas Government Code sections 551.074 and 551.0821, the board will not permit the presentation of personally identifiable information regarding a student and will not discuss the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, or to hear a complaint or charge against an officer or employee pursuant to Texas Government Code section 551.074. Should a speaker wish to address one of these issues, they may do so through the appropriate local grievance policies, FNG local, DGBA local, or GF local. At this time, Ms. Oliver, would you like to announce the first speaker?
Thank you, President Bender. I will also share with you that there is a 3rd card. I didn't have it in my hand at the time I told you there were 2 earlier, but it was received before 7 p.m.
Okay.
First, we have Kevin Bai. Please come forward and share your comments.
Come right over to this side. And by the way, let me let you know that our secretary, Nancy Humphrey, will keep time. You have 3 minutes. She will inform you when you have 1 minute left. So she may speak and say 1 minute, but you may continue.
Yeah, don't let me distract your thought, but I will give you a warning for 1 minute, and then you can complete your comments.
Hello. So it's come to my attention that PISD has established a GPA work study committee to study the effects of weighted GPA. And although this committee has not given any official statement yet, I just want to give my thoughts. I strongly agree with this committee's goals. For example, namely, de-incentivizing students from gaming their selection of classes, that is to take classes just for the sole purpose of raising their GPAs, and to help students develop interests in fine arts and physical education. However, I believe a more effective solution to achieving these stated goals is in fact to get rid of the class ranking system instead of altering the weighted GPA. And here's why. So take, for example, if 2 people hypothetically have a 4.5 and another person has a 4.45. Now this may seem like a really minute difference in weighted GPA, because it is, it's like 1%. However, in Plano West, for example, this could be a difference of 40, 50 ranks. And this giant chasm in class ranking is honestly what drives people to game the system and try to take classes to increase their GPA, and not so much that the fact that weighted GPA exists. And secondly, if weighted GPA were altered, that wouldn't necessarily encourage people to take courses such as orchestra or athletics if class rank still existed. Because even if the weighted GPA system was changed, the game was changed, people would still find ways to play this game. And,
1 minute.
Okay. And so I don't disagree with the fact that the committee is studying weighted GPA, but I do believe that eliminating class rank would be a more effective option to solving these stated goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker, and I will apologize, I can't completely make out the name, but the first 4 letters of the last name is B-H-A-T or B-H-A-T. I apologize, but thank you for coming forward.
No problem. Something less sure of myself. So hello everyone. I'd like to sincerely thank the board and the audience for letting me speak today. My subject is regarding class rank, similarly to Kevin Bai. What I'd like to discuss is the fact that Plano IC has, over the course of the last 2 years, attempted to study class rank and has decided that there might need to be changes toward the system, like putting a 10% GPA line as well as removing the system partially. However, in May 2 of 2017, they voted to delay it for a further year and try to further understand other impacts of, say, the weighted GPA system. The problem with this, however, is we feel that many of the issues with class rank might still continue in the future as long as we don't take action. For example, as my colleague Kevin Bai talked about, we're seeing many people attempt to game the system and take as many AP classes as possible, which is problematic because it forces students to have low amounts of sleep, and it also causes them to have demanding workloads that may not necessarily be the best for them. It also causes their class selections to be changed so that they're taking more toward AP courses, less so things that they might actually be interested in. Also, what we're seeing in many of the Plano schools is that the heavy competition caused by the system has mainly caused students to try and create some sort of a hierarchy to try and demean lower ranking students and try to use that to take an advantage. We're seeing an obsession over rank toward almost all the Plano schools to the point that many people are obsessed more about their GPA than necessarily what the best classes might be for them. And we're also seeing that many of these hyper pressures that occur because of class rank are incentivizing students to take ridiculously large cases in terms of cheating. Across this year, we've seen a lot of horrible examples in which students have attempted to try and use these academic dishonest behaviors, and we've seen more and more over those years. But I think that it's best that we need to find a solution. And that's why over the course of the last 2 weeks, I organized a petition and got 332 people to sign a specific petition that tried their best to create a new system in which class rank would be removed, much like how Plano IC recommended in April 2017, except with a few modifications, such as getting rid of valedictorian and salutatorian, as well as also allowing for a specific top 6% or 7% line for which students could see whether they could be potentially automatically admitted to the University of Texas at Austin. I'll be providing that with you immediately after my public comment. I only have 7 copies of this because I didn't anticipate our newest board member. Congratulations, by the way. So also one thing I want to say about the petition is that sometimes the city isn't correctly listed there, like some people from Plano are stated as Irving and so forth. But I strongly hope that over the next few months, as you're making a decision, you'll look at this, and then for our freshmen next year, and then years forward, they won't have to deal with many of the same pressures and issues that many of my peers have had to deal with over the last few years. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jean Zhang.
Hello, good evening. My name is Jean, and I know I've actually had the pleasure to talk some of the board trustee in the past. And I really appreciate this opportunity because of this channel. I think this PISD is one of the best districts, and that's why I moved here 10 years ago. This provided a channel for us to always communicate the problems or the things we can improve over the time. Okay, one thing comes to our parents' attention recently is the cheating happened in the Plano West Senior. And it's unfortunate it's happening in one of the best districts. And it's happening for a reason. And I think the other two speakers already mentioned, they are thinking, they started petitioning and they're thinking simply removing the ranking system will solve the problem, and that's not the case. They may not realize there are more issues than that, right? And we cannot just remove a system just because it's not perfect. What we really wanted to do is to improve our system to be a better one, right? So in the past few months, I think this topic has been discussed in the last year, June, and the board has realized the proposal just removing the system is not solving the problem and left so many questions unanswered. So they make the wise decision to postpone the decision and study the system from comprehensive angle so we can provide a solution working in the long term, right? So in the past few months, as a parent, some of the parents in this whole group in the community has provided suggestions, thoughts, and ideas how to make these things work, right? Some of the things is you think the system, coming ranking system, is going to help, actually impact the admission, right? But it's not. We only have to, tweak the system,
1 minute.
the GPA, right? And you think the current ranking system is going to reduce, removing the system, removing the ranking is reduce stress, but it's not. The game will only change from chasing after the ranking to chasing after GPA. So we really, really need to work together on the GPA system to remove all the stress and help our students to get a better future, to give them a healthy and fair system to compete and to learn, to pursue the fun of learning. We suggest to have better, even more, punish system, a zero tolerance on the cheating issues. So people are not only chasing after those grades. That's not right. So I look forward to working with, as parents and more parents in the community, more students. They wanted to the system, this district to be a better one, and I look forward to working with the board to have a fair and healthy system. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. At this time, we have no further business, and this meeting of the Plano SD Board of Trustees is adjourned at 8:59 p.m.